China reports its slowest growth rate for nearly 3 decades.
A trade war with America.
What does it mean for the rest of the world?
China has been the economic miracle of recent decades, but is it running out of steam? And why does this matter for the rest?
The US and China have begun talks to try to improve relations between the world's two largest economies. Bilateral trade is worth hundreds of billions of pounds a year.
China's history. Why did China grow so fast? Once upon a time, in the first 100 years of the Ming Dynasty, Chinese technology was ahead of the rest of the world. It possessed a strong navy and an army. It took over from India the post of the largest economy in the world and remained there until the 19th century when the British Empire invented the Industrial Revolution. But China has now returned to claim back its power. The graph here is a snapshot of China's fast real GDP growth versus the rest of the world. If you know anything about compound interest, you understand the effect of a growing double digits for a long time. From 1971 until 2018, the average growth of Chinese real GDP was around 10% yearly, whilst the rest of the world was just hovering below 3%. China is now back on the map. After the fall of the Ming Dynasty in 1912, China underwent a period of instability and disrupted economic activity. It disintegrated in warlords fighting for authority. After 1927, Chiang Kai-shek managed to reunify China. The next decade was a period of relative prosperity despite the civil war and Japanese aggression. The government began to stabilize tax collection, establish a national budget, sponsor the construction of infrastructures such as communications and railroads, and draw up ambitious national plans. However, in 1937, the Japanese invaded and laid China to waste. In 8 years of the Second Sino-Japanese War, from 1937 to 1945. Additionally, the following Chinese Civil War caused the retreat of the Republic of China and the formation of the People's Republic of China. The country was socially, politically, and economically closed off. It was an agrarian economy and authoritarian political regime. In the context of its Republican proclamation and communist revolution led by Mao Zedong, the nation reignited and restarted its reborn process. A swift agrarian reform in 1949 proposed by Mao Zedong consolidated a gradual market openness and accelerated economic modernization. Above all else, China took the ideology of a peaceful ascension. Such ideology consists of a different trajectory to other countries that had a similar path and ended up in political conflicts such as Germany and Japan. Many economists consider that the main determinants of the spectacular economic growth presented by China was because of the following: America's strategy to isolate and deteriorate the ex-Soviet Union, the US commercial initiative to combat increasing Japanese competition, and then C, the internal political strategy to reorganize its state by developing its industry and economic growth. The high rates of public investment, fiscal exemptions, and cheap labor forced attracted companies from all over the world. Thus, more foreign investment went into the country. The Chinese economy started to import fewer tech supplies. It rapidly shifted from a labor-intensive provider to a country that produces and exports technology and products with higher aggregated value. In 1978, the durable goods for mass consumers were limited to clothing, bicycles, watches, and radio. The production of this is slowed between 1984 and 1990. The introduction of new goods was though extraordinary. The production of fridges, televisions, recorders, washing machines, and fans registered explosive growth rates between the aforementioned periods. Industrial production in China grew on average 13% a year between 1980 and 2000, demanding a considerable allocation of scarce resources. Thus, the main responsible for this allocation was the state itself, which directed its investments to the sectors that promised more promise to the country. The process of openness to the market happened gradually. First, through the creation of specific economic zones. These zones have a special rule of law, contributing to foreign money, such as reducing bureaucracies and eliminating taxes on imports of supplies, allied with fiscal subsidies, capital loans, and political support on the canals to the global market. These economic zones were chosen by the Chinese government directly as a strategic decision to push certain geographic areas. And most recently, one of the Chinese initiatives most criticized by Trump and now Biden as well is the currency devaluation to boost exports over its imports, and it has been done to combat the US commercial balance trade. So if you look at this graph, you can see the currency ratio of yuan to the US dollars. Following China's entry into the World Trade Organization in 2001, scientific research processes were intensified for the birth of new industries and to promote the creation of new products. The Chinese economy presents a typical capitalist development process. The secondary sector, the industry, first presents a growth surplus with above average growth, and later services present a greater dynamism and start to leverage growth as well. The agriculture share of GDP was approximately 40% in 1978, when the economic reform began. In 2000, though, this share fell to approximately 9% of total GDP. And on the other hand, industry participation has gone the other way. According to the Angeli, between 1998 and 2008, the composition of the Chinese industrial production evolved towards scale incentive and differentiated technologies. At the same time, technologies based on natural and labor-intensive resources have lost their share. As a result, China became an important export market for the US and Japan and imported from Asia, hence the name of the double pole. This characteristic enabled China to increase its trade flow with Asia and Latin America, gradually increase the value added of its goods produced there. See below an example of the composition of the Chinese commercial balance trade with its biggest partner in Latin America, Brazil. In 2008, China reoriented its production towards the domestic market and higher value-added activities. These were based on large incentives for infrastructure through the reduction of taxes and stimuli in the form of financing to 10 different industrial sectors. Going from an average of 7% between 2011 to 2018, to 5% after the pandemic, and a forecast to reach a small 3% growth by 2030. It's alarming that China is decelerating so fast, and the government will therefore have to act very fast. Since 2010, the Chinese economy has slowed down. Its economic slowdown is congruent with the rest of the world, which is also decelerating. Economic growth rate in China is slowing down because of diverse factors such as one-child policy and population getting old, the loss of entrepreneurship to the US, accelerating protection from other countries including the US imposing tariffs and taxes on Chinese goods, high debt to GDP, especially on real estate, youth unemployment, and excessive government interventions. Now, here's how the Chinese government can do to combat this and keep growing. In terms of working population, the challenge to China is how to keep growing when the median age is 38.4 years, whilst the US median age is 38.8 years, quite similar to each other, but the US is a lot more developed. China's median age has been increasing in recent years due to a number of factors, including a declining birth rate, an aging population, and increased life expectancy. None of the societies struggling with declining birth rates have been able to bend this trend, despite massive incentives in Singapore, for example. China's best bet here is to invent and invest in new robotics and AI and increase longevity of its population, all of which China has been doing but is still behind the US. Immigration is very limited to China too. The other countries outside of Taiwan that speak Mandarin are Malaysia with 6.4 million people and Indonesia with 2.2 million people speaking Mandarin. 10 million people immigrants is nothing to a 1.4 billion population. The alternative would be a gradual transition to English as the official language of business in China, similarly to Singapore, or to expand Mandarin influence in the rest of the world, which is very hard to do but possible. Real estate accounts for approximately 30% of China's GDP. This includes direct investments in real estate as well as indirect investment through industries such as construction materials and finance. Real estate has played a significant role in China's economic growth in recent decades. The country's rapid urbanization has led to a surge in demand for housing, both residential and commercial. This has driven investment in real estate development and construction. Real estate has also been a major source of wealth for Chinese households. Many Chinese families have invested a significant portion of their savings into real estate. This has helped to boost household consumption and support economic growth. However, China's real estate has also been a concern in recent years. The sector has been increasingly getting indebted, and there are fears of the bubble. The Chinese government has taken steps to cool the real estate market, but it remains to be seen whether these measures are successful. Number 3. Trade war and innovation. China's tech crackdown wiped over $1 trillion worth of market value of its companies, but it finally seems to be at the end. The United States is currently imposing a 25% tariff on approximately $250 billion worth of imports from China, and a 7.5% tariff on another $112 billion worth of imports from China. The US is also careful with what AI chips is exporting to China, and capital inflow to invest in its companies and venture capital has dramatically slowed down. The path ahead for the Chinese government either involves A. Reestablishing collaborative environment with the West and maintaining current crackdowns but not going any further. B. Doing more on the BRICS sphere, taking the lead in the global agenda representing the East and possibly invading Taiwan. Around 25% of Apple's production facilities have shifted to India. Xi Jinping is the best thing that has ever happened for India. Number 4. GDP growth and interest rates. For China's GDP growth is forecast to end at 5% growth by the end of 2023, and its interest rates are now at 3.70%, leaving little leeway to cut rates and boost more growth. The US is forecast to end at 2.2% growth of GDP, and its interest rates are at 5.25%. Both countries are pretty close now, and the Chinese economy is not so far ahead to the US as it used to be. So that is China's economic history in summary, where it's headed, its main challenges and opportunities. I hope you liked this video. If you did, can you do me a favor? Please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you so much, and until next time.